Hello, so it's July 13 and it is 11:15 p.m. Basically, I had to talk about why it is that people in the government are on my side. The reason is that the people in the government basically know these people in law enforcement long before everyone else does. So people in news media and everywhere else basically found out about these people in law enforcement after November 20th, 2025. So basically, everyone found out about my brain savant, and what basically happened was people in the family were obviously much more envious than normal people would be, mainly because there were people like my dad, the greedy framer, who knew that he wasn't going to get a single penny out of me. He doesn't deserve any of it, and he wasn't going to get any. And there were other people like his framer sisters, like the greedy framer spokesperson Ibrahim's mother, who were incredibly envious of the fact that I had a brain savant and that I came back home with my college degree after literally sleeping on the streets to give the entire 108 exams. While a lot of people, like, I don't know about her kids, but a lot of people in this family, have kids that are basically drug addicts. And there are different drugs and they affect different people, different races differently. So if a Caucasian person does heroin, that has a really high addiction potential. But for a person of South Asian descent, something like crystal methamphetamine might have a really high addiction potential. So addiction potentials are basically dependent on a person's race. What happens is there's a enzyme in our body, it's called cytochrome P450, and metabolizes drugs differently based on the person's race. It gives it different effects. It gives it different clearances. Everything about the drug is different based on a person's race. And for certain drugs, for people of South Asian descent, they're not letting me talk. Certain drugs of people of South Asian descent would have a higher addiction potential than other drugs. So basically, crystal methamphetamine is going to have a higher addiction potential for someone of South Asian descent than even heroin would have. And that's because it gives a different effect than the effect that a Caucasian person would get from taking that same exact drug as compared to heroin. So for a person of South Asian descent, something like crystal methamphetamine would have a higher addiction potential than something like heroin would. For a person who's of Caucasian descent, something like heroin would have a higher addiction potential than something like crystal methamphetamine would. The other thing is, street drugs are totally different from, I mean, it goes without saying, I know, but like, before I said that, I just cracked up because, yeah, like, no kidding, but street drugs are totally different from the drugs that you get in pharmacies. I know a lot of people might think that the drugs that are in pharmacies, like Schedule II substances, might be similar to street drugs, but that's not true at all. In fact, street drugs are a lot more addictive than any drug that you could get inside of a pharmacy, mainly because people that make street drugs make it so that they're so addictive that once a person takes it, they cannot ever stop taking it. And the way they do it is by it's by basically lowering the drug's tolerance. So if there's a Schedule II substance that a person takes in a pharmacy, it would be totally different from a street drug that a person takes. They're not letting me think right now. Let me just think for a second.